There is a unique silence in the moment you win. It's not an empty silence. It's a thick, heavy quiet, filled with the echoes of every tear, every sleepless night, every ounce of doubt you ever had. I was sitting in a leather chair that cost more than my first car, staring across a polished mahogany desk at the man who shattered my world 5 years ago. His face, usually a mask of smug arrogance, was pale. His hands were trembling. He had just been told he was finished, and he had no idea I was the one who pulled the trigger. He tried to speak, but all that came out was a choked, "How?" I leaned forward, a small, cold smile touching my lips for the first time in half a decade. "I learned from the best," I said. "You taught me that to destroy something, you have to be patient. You have to be ruthless. You have to be a ghost." And in that moment, after 1,125 days of planning, of pretending, of swallowing my rage, it was all worth it. Have you ever been pushed so far into a corner that the only way out was to burn the whole place down? Have you ever been betrayed so deeply that the memory of it became a part of your DNA? If you know that feeling, if you've ever dreamed of a justice so perfect it feels like a work of art, then you are in the right place. Hit that like button, subscribe, and settle in. Because this isn't just a story of revenge. This is a story of a masterpiece, 5 years in the making. My name is Alex, and 5 years ago, I was a different person. Younger, softer. I believed in loyalty, in hard work, in the idea that if you kept your head down and did the right thing, you would be rewarded. I was a junior analyst at a boutique financial firm called Viridian Capital. It was the kind of place that smelled of expensive coffee, ambition, and quiet desperation. And my entire world revolved around my mentor, Julian. If you met him, you'd understand. Charismatic doesn't even begin to cover it. He had a smile that could disarm a bomb, and a voice that made even the most ridiculous ideas sound like gospel. He took me under his wing when I was a nervous intern, fresh out of college and drowning in imposter syndrome. He'd clap me on the shoulder, call me his protege, and tell me I had the sharpest mind he'd seen in years. I lapped it up. For 2 years, I was his shadow. I worked 80-hour weeks. I crunched the numbers on his biggest deals. I drafted the presentations that wowed the senior partners. I was the engine in the car he was driving, and I was happy to be there, because he promised me we were going to the same destination. The memory of the day it all began to unravel is burned into my mind with the clarity of a high-definition nightmare. It was a Thursday. Rain streaked the floor-to-ceiling windows of our high-rise office, turning the city below into a blur of smeared lights. We were preparing for the Ethelred Pharmaceuticals pitch, a massive, multi-million-dollar account that was the key to a partnership track. I had spent 3 months living and breathing Ethelred. I'd found the flaw in their supply chain logistics that no one else had spotted. I'd built the financial model that proposed a revolutionary restructuring. It was my work, my brainchild. I walked into Julian's office, my tablet glowing with the finished presentation. My heart was pounding, not with nervousness, but with pride. "Julian, it's ready. The Ethelred model, I think this is going to blow them away." He was on the phone, but he waved me in, that famous smile on his face. He ended the call and took the tablet. He scrolled and scrolled. His smile didn't fade, but it changed. It became calculating. "This is incredible work, Alex, truly. The insight on the supply chain. Genius, you've outdone yourself." A wave of relief and pride washed over me. "Thanks. I was thinking for the pitch I could lead with the—" "No," he said, his voice smooth as silk. "This is too important. The partners are skittish. They need to see a seasoned hand on the wheel. I'll present it. But your name will be all over the backup materials, I promise. This is our win." The disappointment was a physical blow, a cold knot tightening in my stomach. But I swallowed it. He was my mentor. He knew the politics. I nodded, my voice quiet. "Okay, whatever it takes to win the account." The pitch was a triumph. Julian was magnificent. He presented my ideas with a theatrical flair that had the Ethelred executives leaning forward in their seats. He used my exact phrases, my specific data points. I sat in the corner, silent, a ghost at the feast of my own creation. When he finished, the room erupted in applause. One of the senior partners, Mr. Davison, clapped Julian on the back. "Julian, you've done it again! That supply chain analysis was a work of art." And Julian, without missing a beat, without even a glance in my direction, said the words that would echo in my soul for the next 5 years. "Thank you, Robert." Sometimes you just have to trust your gut. Internal monologue. Trust his gut? My gut was twisted into a pretzel of disbelief. I felt the air leave my lungs. It was like watching someone steal my child and claim it as their own. The heat rose up my neck, a flush of pure, undiluted humiliation. I looked down at my hands, clenched so tight in my lap that my knuckles were white. This wasn't an oversight. This was a erasure. I confronted him later, in the empty quiet of his office after the celebratory champagne had been poured and drunk. "Julian, you didn't mention my contribution. Not once." He looked up from his desk, and the charismatic mask was gone, replaced by something colder, harder. "Alex, this is a team sport. You got a paycheck, didn't you? You want a pat on the head? This is the big leagues. Credit is a currency, and you're still in the minor leagues. Be patient." Internal monologue, patience. He said the word like it was a virtue, but in that moment it tasted like ash. It was the word people in power used to keep those without it in their place. My vision tunneled. The expensive art on his walls, the tailored suit, the smug assurance, it all coalesced into a single terrifying realization. I was not his protege. I was his tool, and tools are meant to be used, then stored away when they are no longer needed. But the true breaking point came 2 weeks later. The Ethelred deal was signed, and with it, a significant bonus was dispersed. I received a standard performance bonus, a respectable number. But then the company-wide memo went out. Congratulations to Julian Croft on his monumental success in securing the Ethelred account. In recognition of his exceptional leadership and innovative strategy, he has been promoted to senior partner and will be receiving the company's Deal of the Year award, along with a discretionary bonus. The number attached to that bonus was more than my annual salary. The injustice was a physical weight, crushing me into my cheap office chair. I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. The sounds of the office became a distant roar. I was powerless. If I spoke up, I was the jealous, disloyal junior. I would be blackballed, fired. He had all the power and I had none. But then, something in me shifted. The cold fury didn't make me scream. It didn't make me cry. It made me quiet. It made me still. It was a crystal clear, freezing calm that settled in my bones. I looked across the open plan office, through the glass wall of Julian's new corner office. He was laughing, holding up his phone, probably showing off the bonus notification. He caught my eye for a split second, and he gave me a faint, dismissive smirk before turning away. Internal monologue. That smirk. It wasn't just arrogance. It was a confirmation. He knew what he had done, and he knew I could do nothing about it. But in that moment, a blueprint began to form in my mind, not of a financial model, but of a prison. A prison I would build for him, one invisible brick at a time. He wanted me to be patient? Okay, I would be patient. I would be the most patient person he had ever met. That night, I didn't go home. I went to a quiet, dingy bar miles away from the financial district. I ordered a whiskey and I took out a napkin. Not a tablet, not a laptop. A paper napkin. And I began to write. This wasn't a to-do list. It was a manifesto. A declaration of war. The goal was not to get him fired. That was too small. Too quick. The goal was to take from him everything he cared about. His status, his wealth, his reputation, his freedom. I would make him experience the same powerlessness he had inflicted on me. But I would do it legally, methodically, perfectly. The plan had 3 phases, spanning 5 years. Phase 1, the ghost. I would become the perfect invisible employee. I would swallow every insult, every stolen idea, every ounce of disrespect. I would make myself so useful, so reliable, and so utterly non-threatening that he would forget I was even a person, let alone a threat. I would become a ghost in his machine. Phase 2. The apprentice. I would learn, not just about finance, but about him, his habits, his weaknesses, his vices. I would study the intricacies of corporate law, of forensic accounting, of corporate structures in offshore jurisdictions. I would make connections quietly with people he had wronged. I would become an expert in Julian Croft. Phase 3. The architect. I would build my own power base, entirely separate from him and Viridian. A venture so successful, so unassailable, that when the time was right, I could use it as a weapon to dismantle his life. For the next 2 years, I was the ghost. If Julian took credit for my work, I would just nod. It was a team effort. If he gave me a grueling, meaningless task, I would complete it flawlessly and ahead of schedule. I perfected a mask of bland competence. I never complained. I never argued. I saw the pity in some of my colleagues' eyes, and I used it as fuel. The rage was my engine, but I kept it buried deep, a nuclear reactor core encased in lead. Meanwhile, I lived a double life. Every night, every weekend, was for Phase 2. I spent a small fortune on online courses in forensic accounting and corporate compliance. I read SEC filing regulations until my eyes burned. I traced shell companies through public databases. And I started to find threads. A consulting fee paid to a company in the Cayman Islands that didn't seem to exist. Inflated expense reports for client entertainment with clients who had no record of the meetings. Small things. Petty even, but a pattern was emerging. Julian wasn't just a credit thief. He was a thief, period. He was skimming from the company. He was playing a dangerous game. During this time, I also made a single crucial ally. Sarah, from the IT department. She was sharp, quiet, and had been passed over for a promotion because of Julian's budget concerns. I didn't ask her to do anything illegal. I just befriended her. We'd get coffee. I'd listen to her frustrations. I became a sympathetic ear. The seed was planted. At the end of year 2, I did something drastic. I quit Viridian. The look on Julian's face was priceless. A mixture of surprise and condescending amusement. Leaving us, Alex? Found a better opportunity? Something like that, I said, my voice neutral. I think I need a change of scenery. Thank you for everything you've taught me. He shook my hand, a patronizing gesture. Anytime. You had potential. Keep your head up. Internal monologue. Potential. He had no idea. The student was about to surpass the master, and the master was too blind to see it. I used the modest savings I had, and the one thing Julian couldn't steal, my actual intelligence and work ethic. I started my own boutique consulting firm. I specialized in the exact same niche as Viridian, but with a twist. Absolute radical transparency. I worked with smaller clients, startups that the big firms ignored. I poured my soul into it. Every success was a brick in my foundation. Every positive review was a weapon being forged. My firm, Ethelgard Solutions, grew. Slowly at first, then exponentially. I hired carefully, building a team of brilliant, disillusioned people who had been chewed up by corporate giants like Viridian. We were lean, mean, and hungry, and we were successful, profitable. By year 4, we were a known, respected player. And then, the opportunity of a lifetime fell into my lap. Ethelred Pharmaceuticals, the very company whose deal had started this whole war, was in trouble. Their stock was plummeting. The revolutionary restructuring I had designed 5 years ago, Julian had been too lazy to oversee its proper implementation. He'd collected his bonus and moved on. The supply chain flaw had festered and was now bleeding them dry. They were desperate, and they put out a request for proposals to save them. Viridian Capital, of course, submitted one. So did we. I personally led the pitch. When I walked into the Ethelred boardroom, I saw the recognition dawn on the CEO's face. I was the quiet kid in the corner from 5 years ago. Alex, isn't it? He said. You were with Julian Croft. I was, I said, my voice steady. But today I'm here with Ethelgard Solutions, and I'm here to fix the problem I identified half a decade ago. We won the account. It was a multi-million-dollar contract that cemented my firm's reputation. It was the first major blow. Julian was humiliated. Losing his flagship client to his former useless junior? The industry gossiped. But that was just the beginning. The appetizer. The main course was served because of Phase 2, because of my years of research. I discovered Julian had a gambling problem. A serious one. The offshore payments, the inflated expenses. It was all to feed his losses at high-stakes poker games in Macau. And he wasn't just using company money. He had started a side fund, pooling money from a few wealthy, risk-hungry clients, promising them outrageous returns. A classic Ponzi scheme, using new investor money to pay off the old ones. It was only a matter of time before it collapsed. I had the evidence. The spreadsheets, the bank routing numbers, the shell company documents. I had compiled it all into a neat, damning package. But I didn't go to the SEC, not yet. I went to the clients, the ones whose money he was stealing. I arranged discreet meetings. I showed them the evidence. I didn't ask for anything in return. I simply presented the facts. The rage and betrayal they felt, it was a sight to behold. One of them, a notoriously ruthless hedge fund manager named Mr. Vance, looked at me across the table. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because what he's doing is wrong," I said, my gaze level. "And because he did something very similar to me a long time ago." Vance nodded slowly. "A predator recognizing another. I see. Thank you for the information." That was the trigger. The clients descended on Julian like a pack of wolves. They threatened lawsuits, criminal charges, physical violence. He was trapped. He tried to liquidate assets, but the money was gone, lost across a dozen green felt tables, which brings us to yesterday. The final act. I received a panicked call from a senior partner at Viridian. Julian was in a crisis meeting. The Ethelred loss had been bad enough, but now these rumors. Could I come in? As a respected industry leader and someone who knew Julian, perhaps I could provide some perspective. I walked into the Viridian boardroom for the first time in 3 years. The air was thick with tension and the scent of fear. Julian sat at the far end of the table, a shell of the man he once was. His suit was rumpled, his eyes bloodshot. The senior partners, including Mr. Davison, looked grim. "Alex, thank you for coming," Davison began. "We have a sensitive situation. Julian's personal investments seem to have impacted some of our clients." Julian looked up, his eyes wild. "It's a smear campaign. Vance is lying because he lost money on a bad trade." It was then that I spoke, my voice cutting through the panic like a knife. "It's not a smear campaign, Julian." Every eye in the room turned to me. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out a single, slim folder. I didn't need it. I had every word memorized, but the theatricality was important. "I have here," I said, laying the folder gently on the table, "a summary of wire transfers from the Cyprus Holdings account in the Cayman Islands to the Golden Dragon Casino in Macau, dating back to 2018. I have records of client funds from the Vance account and others being diverted to cover these losses. I have the incorporation documents for Cyprus Holdings, which list a sole director." I let the silence hang in the air for a long, painful moment. "Who?" Davison whispered, his face ashen. I looked directly at Julian. "You taught me that in this business the details are everything. You taught me to be patient. You taught me that to get what you want, you have to be willing to do what others won't." I paused. "But you never taught me to be a thief." I slid the folder down the polished table. It stopped directly in front of Mr. Davison. He opened it. His eyes scanned the first page, then the second. His hand went to his mouth. "My God, Julian!" The reaction was not explosive. It was a slow, horrifying implosion. Julian's bravado evaporated. The color drained from his face, leaving a sickly gray pallor. His shoulders slumped. as if the strings holding him up had been cut. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw not arrogance, not condescension, but raw, undiluted terror. The realization that I had known. For years I had known, and I had waited for this exact moment to destroy him. How? He choked out, his voice a broken thing. That's when I leaned forward, the cold, calm smile finally reaching my lips. I learned from the best, I said. You taught me that to destroy something, you have to be patient. You have to be ruthless. You have to be a ghost. The room was silent. The other partners stared at me, a new, fearful respect in their eyes. They saw the ghost now. They saw the architect. Julian was fired on the spot. The firm will be reporting him to the SEC and likely pressing criminal charges. He will likely face jail time. He is financially ruined. His reputation is ash. I stood up and walked out of the boardroom. I didn't look back. As the elevator doors closed, I felt nothing at first. Then a wave of something so profound it was almost spiritual. It wasn't happiness. It wasn't even joy. It was peace. The 5-year wait was finally lifted. The scales were balanced. They say living well is the best revenge. I don't entirely agree. I think building something beautiful and unassailable from the ashes of someone else's cruelty, and then using it to ensure they can never hurt anyone again, that might be a close second. Revenge isn't about rage. It's about cold, patient, meticulous justice. If this story of perfect justice gave you that satisfying chill, then do me a favor. Smash that like button, and let me know in the comments. What's the most patient and calculated revenge you've ever witnessed? And of course, subscribe to the channel and ring the bell, because every day, there's someone out there patiently building their masterpiece. You won't want to miss the next one.